So, welcome everyone. My name is Irene Mendez. I work at Rice Global, and this is the info session for HART 370, Inventing Paris, Making Space in the Age of Global Capital. Like I said, I work at Rice Global, and I really help with the student programs in all marketing courses and pre-departure information. So you'll be hearing a lot from me if you do get into this course. But I'll pass it on to Fabiola and Gordon to introduce themselves and then start the presentation about the course. And at the very end, I'll talk really quickly about what the program entails and what you'll be getting. So Fabiola, feel free to.
Well, I'm Fabiola Lopez Duran. I teach in the art history department. I'm an art and architectural historian of the modern period, let's say 20th century. And I work from a kind of interdisciplinary transnational perspective, back and forth between Latin Europe and Latin America, and in particular France. And what else I can say? This is the third class that I will be teaching at the Paris Global Center, and the second time that I'm doing something with Rice students with Gordon, which I think is going to be really fantastic. And we designed a wonderful class that we cannot wait to share with you guys.
And I am Gordon Hughes. I am an associate professor in the art history department, colleague to the fabulous Fabiola. I am a so-called specialist in 20th and 20th century art. My background, so originally I was a practicing visual artist until I had a pretty severe career change, first into philosophy and then into art history. Yeah, so that's me.
I maybe should say that my previous life was as an architect also. I was
very importantly for this class.
Yeah, exactly. An artist and an architect that decided to become historians. So here we are.
There you go. All right, should we get started? Did you want to go first, Irene? Or do I just jump right in?
Yeah, I just thought you guys could talk about the program for a bit since my part is really just about, it's not the program, but the course itself. And then I just will quickly just share where people can apply and then program.
Okay, I will start then. I'm going to share my screen. I hope you can all see that.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so the premise of this class is that we're going to be taking a much more well, literally kind of global view of Paris, certainly a much more bird's eye view of Paris, because this is the normal image that we have. I shouldn't say normal. This is a common image that we have as Americans of Paris. I think this is the sort of international view of Paris. This is obviously Notre Dame Cathedral, the Ile Saint-Louis, the River Seine. This is the image of Paris that was made famous by the Impressionists, these Grands Boulevards, the Paris Opera, the old Opera Garnier. We have this very beautiful, Paris is famous for these very beautiful streets in Montmartre and in the Marais and so on. But this view of Paris, well, certainly not false. It also is not entirely true either, which is to say that it conceals. If you think that this is what Paris is, then you're missing a lot of the actuality of Paris, certainly contemporary Paris. And we can see this, for example, if we look at the shift in the distribution of the population of Paris over the last 100, 150 years or so. So if we look all the way back in the upper left-hand corner at Paris in the 1860s, you can see how the majority of the population was clustered right in the very center of Paris. That continues to be the case at the turn of the century. By mid-century, by 1946, you can see the population is much more dispersed. And in 2017, you have this almost complete inverse of what you had in the original middle of the 19th century, where the population is much more spread out towards the edge of the city. And that trend has continued even more in the last 10 years. So this is a more current image of the population density of Paris. And you can see that, so this black line here, that's the periphery of Paris. There's actually a road that circles Paris called the Boulevard Périphérique. And that is the ring road that sort of contains Paris. And you can see how the population has really spread beyond the periphery here. But one of the other things that is concealed in this sort of romantic idea that we have of Paris is the massive inequality of income distribution. So if we look at the map on the left, on the right, the areas in green and yellow are the middle classes. Dark green are the very wealthy, as opposed to the orange and dark red, which are below the poverty level, dark red being extreme levels of poverty. And you can see how the way Paris has become organized is to basically balkanize or separate out areas of extreme poverty that are separated from areas of the middle class or extreme wealth. And that's very different if we look at a city like London. You can see that there are indeed clusters of great wealth in London, but overall, income distribution is much more evenly dispersed throughout the city, even though London is very much a city of have and have-nots. Nonetheless, they tend to live shoulder by shoulder with one another. And that's different, again, still from a city like Rio de Janeiro, where you can see the dark brown at the very bottom. That's, again, sort of extreme wealth. The lighter areas are extreme poverty. So we're going to be looking at the sort of specifics of how that clustering of people below the poverty level has occurred in Paris. Very, very often, not always, but very, very often, those people are from former colonies or are have their roots, their ethnic roots in those former colonies, particularly North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. And then the other thing about this image of Paris that we have is that we have a particular idea of what Parisians are like, which is to say us Americans, and indeed I think internationally there's a certain idea of Parisians as being chic, well-dressed, amorous intellectuals who hang out in cafes and discuss philosophy and so on and so on. But that, again, really distorts the idea of what contemporary Paris looks like in terms of the population of Paris, the demographic breakdown of Paris, who is a Parisian. So this is very clear, for example, in the 13th arrondissement, Paris is broken into 20 different sections called arrondissements. So this is the Asian neighborhood or quartier in the 13th arrondissement. This is very close to the student residences where you all will be staying, which is also in the 13th arrondissement. So this is the Parisian, they call it the Parisian Chinatown, but in actual fact, it's people of Asiatic descent from all throughout Asia. A lot of Vietnamese, a lot of Filipinos, a lot of Koreans also live here. And likewise, in the 20th arrondissement, you also have this large Asian population. The 20th arrondissement is an area called Belleville. It's one of my tip-top favorite parts of Paris. Also very, it's a very old, very storied part of Paris, a lot of North African immigrants as well. Likewise, immigrants from South Asia, so places like the Passage Brady in the 10th arrondissement. This is one of these covered passages that you find throughout Paris. This is an all-Indian, a really remarkable spot. And then you get these interesting things where specific kinds of businesses are owned by different types of immigrants, often very specific. So one of the interesting things is that hardware stores have very often throughout Paris been taken over by South Asians who immigrated from Africa, and particularly from Madagascar. So when you go into a hardware store in Paris, it's very common that you will see the owner or the person behind the counter will be of Indian descent who immigrated from Madagascar or elsewhere in Africa. And that's what this man here is talking about, how indeed there's a sort of network of Indian Madagascans, if I said that correctly, who take over these hardware stores. One of the most common ethnic groups, one of the most populous ethnic groups in Paris are persons of North African descent, so Algerians, Moroccans in particular. Here we see, so you can see they're very spread out throughout. There's not a single quartier or arrondissement that is really the most populous and within the periphery, within the 20 arrondissement. But you can see that they tend to be clustered towards the edge of the periphery. If you look at this map on the left, whereas in the very center of Paris, there's much less of a North African presence. And the same is true of sub-Saharan Africans who have, there are different arrondissements and different places where persons who came from former African colonies, mostly West Africa, have clustered and formed little areas. They're in the 20th arrondissement. There is an area called Goutte d'Or, the gold drops, which they call Petite Africa, Petite Afrique, Little Africa.
When you think about La Goutte d'Or, people told me oh my God, don't go to Le Goutte d'Or. And I'm like, pourquoi? You know, I'm from California, from Oakland, actually. And it didn't feel threatening. I met amazing people. You can see there's a pride in the neighborhood.
Again, there is a very vibrant Jewish community. This is in the 4th arrondissement, very, very close to the Global Paris Center is this very vibrant Jewish area with this wonderful synagogue by Victor Guimard, who designed all of the subway entrances in Paris, or the most beautiful ones. And then the other thing that is often missed in our sort of view of Parisians is class. And when one of the big indicators of class, as in the United States, is smoking. So for example, if we look at the number of tabac, so a tabac is a tobacco shop. There, you don't pronounce the C at the end. You see them throughout Paris. They're very common. But if you look at the number of tabac in Saint-Germain, you can see there are only 4 of them. And one of those is actually a sort of high-end cigar shop. So even that is not really accurate. But if you look by contrast at the number of tabac in the 19th arrondissement or any of the other arrondissements, honestly, particularly around the periphery, you're going to find a lot more of these tobacco shops, these tabac. Okay, that brings us to the substance of the course, and particularly this idea of Grand Paris. Now, this idea of Grand Paris is not a new concept. Since the 19th century, there has been a gradual expansion out beyond the periphery. And that was originally precipitated by the railroad. So when the railroad became readily available, the wealthy and the upper bourgeoisie began to have these sort of day areas where they would go and swim and picnic and so on. These were commonly represented by the Impressionists. This is a painting on the lower left is a painting by Renoir of a place called La Grenouillerie. La Grenouillère. And the Grenouillère means the frog pond. So this is a place where Parisians would go. It was a sort of restaurant, swimming hole. And you can see in the image on the left here, where it has the actual trains and the timetable for, when you catch the train out there. Now, of course, needless to say, this changes dramatically with the invention of the car. This is the boulevard périphérique that I mentioned. This is the ring road that circles Paris. So with the car, suddenly people can really move in and out of Paris much more readily. The periphery becomes much more permeable. And here you can see the periphery. So this dark line here, that's the River Seine. This is a current Google what's that called? Google Earth picture. And you can see how visible the periphery, that dark green line around the edge there, that is the periphery. So it's still very much very much a part of what makes Paris Paris, is this strong sense of the periphery. And within the periphery, you have these 20 arrondissements. Originally, Paris was just an island. It was the Ile Saint-Louis. So because it was an island, it obviously had its own sort of natural periphery. And here on the right, you can see this sort of gradual expansion outward over time. This is a sort of map of the history of these peripheries. Mostly these were fortifications that developed originally with the Romans, then in the Middle Ages and so on. So there was this gradual expansion outward. Paris went through a major transformation, a major project of modernization in the middle of the 19th century with Baron von Haussmann, a figure we do not want to talk about very much in this class because it is so much discussed in histories of Paris. People really obsess over what's called Haussmannization. But in the 19th century with Haussmann, you do have this push beyond the peripheries, particularly with these two parks. So there's the Bois de Boulogne here on the left side of Paris, and then the Bois de Vincennes on the right. That changes even more in 1919, right after the First World War, with a plan by a designer, an urban architect named Léon Joussely, who also designed Barcelona. And you can see things are really beginning to move out towards the periphery. So this is the moment where the so-called hinterlands of Paris are really beginning to develop. Paris is really pushing beyond its periphery. And then the big change happens under de Gaulle in the Fifth Republic. The Fifth Republic, we're in the Fifth Republic now. There are 5 different republics in the history of France. The Fifth Republic occurs when France relinquishes its colonies and under de Gaulle. And de Gaulle thought that Paris was a mess outside of the periphery, and he asked this man, Paul de Louvrier, to clean it up. To organize it. De Louvrier, very importantly, was a civil servant. He was a politician and what the French call a fonctionnaire. And he really gave form to the sense of Greater Paris or Grand Paris, which we see here. So that he, from scratch, developed these 6 new sort of suburban areas outside of Paris. So these are all, we'll be looking at some of these, probably Cergy, Pontoise in particular we'll be looking at. That was all done under de Louvrier. He also developed the RER, which are these high-speed trains. I'm forgetting off the top of my head what RER stands for. But they're high-speed commuter trains. So there are these 2 sort of parallel tracks. And then also built the airport Charles de Gaulle, which is the main airport now in Paris. And, you know, this is what Paris looks like in 1965. You can see, so this right in the very center, that's Paris in the periphery, but you can see how developed it's become outside of the periphery if we take a much larger sort of bird's eye view of Paris. So if we look here, so here you see the railroad beginning to expand out. And with that expansion, we also have the development of roads. When that happens, different communities begin to develop, and alongside of different communities begins to develop different forms of industry. But these industry, very importantly, are all heavy industry, right? It's all manufacturing, industrial industries, and so on. And that's very, very different than Paris now. So Paris in the 1860s, 70s, 80s, that was all based on on manufacturing and industrial parks. That really changes massively when then President Nicolas Sarkozy in 2007 announces this new phase in Parisian development, which he calls Grand Paris. Grand Paris. So this is this new massive moment of redevelopment. He announces a international architecture competition. 10 architecture teams are chosen. And then they spend 2 years having these workshops and a sort of R&D development period where they examine Paris, think about the future, think about how Paris needs to move forward into the 21st century. This is, there was a lot of fanfare around this idea of this new phase, massive change in the development of Paris, Grand Paris. But the backdrop to this, very importantly, are these riots that occur in 2005 and 2007. So the banlieue means suburb. The word itself, banlieue, is a change from the word banlieue, which means good place, ironically, because the banlieue in Paris are not good places overall. They're places that have extreme poverty. There's extreme instances of racism on the part of the police against the inhabitants of the banlieue, who, like I said, are mostly North African or Sub-Saharan African. And that exploded in 2005 and 2007. There were these massive riots that the French government had a very hard time containing and putting down. The other backdrop for this is the 2008 financial crisis. This brings an end to what, or many people say it absolutely does not bring an end to, but many people thought it would bring an end to this moment in late capitalism that we now call neoliberalism, which is something we're going to talk a lot about in the class. Okay, so this is Sarkozy in 2009. This is the moment after all of the workshops have concluded, and it enters this new phase of actual construction. This is what Sarkozy said. He said, "How is a city to be remade? The civic link, the social link, solidarity and citizenship. How are these achieved for great metropolises such that they become once again sites of progress, prosperity, and partnership? How does one invent the sustainable city, the post-Kyoto city," which is to say, the Kyoto Accords were these environmental accords. This is perhaps the greatest challenge to politics of the 21st century. France has decided to take up this challenge. France has decided to give an example. This is the ambition of Grand Paris, this new phase in Parisian development. Okay, so these are the teams of architects, the 10 teams that were chosen for this competition to redesign Paris. I won't dwell on them. I'll just say go through these quickly. So there's Great Britain was represented, France, another French team, two more French teams. Jean Nouvel on the right is a very visible, prominent French architect. He became the loudest critic of Grand Paris. So he was very vociferous in his critiques of what Grand Paris became. An Italian team, a German team, French team, a Dutch team, Okay. Now, one of the things about Grand Paris is that France now, unlike the changes that occurred under Delouvrier under de Gaulle in the middle of the 20th century, France is a very different kind of place, and the world is a very different kind of place. So in 1960, under Delouvrier, 35% of the global population lived in cities. Now 60% of the global population lives in cities. We're a much more urbanized globe right now. Also in 1950, you had just over 6 million people in Greater Paris. This is Paris and its environs. And now there are just over 11 million people. So the population has really exploded, and that's placed a lot of pressure on all kinds of things, environmental factors, infrastructure, transportation, and so on. And above all, and this is the big change that happens, is that this development of Grand Paris is no longer focused first and foremost on heavy industry, on manufacturing. Instead, what the conceit of Grand Paris was that Paris would become a part of a network of global finance. And this is why we, in our title, we have this description of global capital. That's how Paris was conceived, to be part of this neoliberal global network with inlaid capitalism. And we're gonna be talking a lot about the ways in which this shift towards a sort of neoliberal model of finance completely alters the way in which Paris has been conceived in terms of its development. Okay, that's it for me. I'm gonna hand this over to Fabiola.
So during our first week, we will focus on the causes and the precedents of the extraordinary development of Paris that, as a global metropolis that Gordon just described. So we will look at the riots of the Parisian banlieues in 2005 and 2007, the global economic crisis of 2008, and the mega architectures that were produced during the Fifth Republic. So our very first day, we will start with a sort of urban archaeology of the 13th arrondissement, in particular, a very ultra-modern area that has been developed along the banks of the river, so between the river and the rails of the train, which became a sort of like living lab for ambitious new architectural buildings and repurposed industrial complexes. So we will spend a full afternoon walking along the neighborhood and visiting some of these incredible developments, starting with, the Bibliothèque Nationale by Dominique Perrault, which is this amazing building at the border of the river, together with the Cité de la Mode that was developed by this couple, a younger group of architects. We will also look at some of these urban elements, such as the undulating footbridge, the Passerelle Simone de Beauvoir, that links the Parc de Bercy to the Bibliothèque Nationale, and this incredible floating swimming pool on the river that was dedicated to Josephine Baker. We will also visit some industrial buildings that has been rehabilitated for contemporary uses, such as Le Frigo, which is a refrigerated food storage facility that was built in the 1920s and has been transformed into a monumental artistic workspace. call the National Superior d'Architecture de Paris and the House of Projects, which today occupy a new building by Frederic Borel, the 19th century compressed air factory, and the old factory manager house. Here we have a former railway storage facility from the early 1920s that is transformed into the world's largest startup campus by architect Jean-Michel Wilmot. We will also visit this incredible new building. It's a high-rise social housing designed by Maison Edouard François in 2016, which includes a hostel for young workers, a nursery on the ground floor, and other facilities for the diversification of nature within the building itself. Then we will move to understanding the protests of 2005, which began in the banlieue of the northeast part of Paris, in particular in two neighborhoods, Clichy-sous-Bois and Montfermeil. So we will watch two fascinating films, La Haine or Hate and Les Misérables. And we will look at the work of a very successful French artist, J.R., in that specific neighborhood. So a year before the riots, he started taking pictures of these young people that were living in that neighborhood. 1 year later, when the very extreme social discontent started after the death of two teenagers that were hidden from the police in an electricity substation, he decided to take pictures of them because in order to contrast the kind of image of them as bandits, that xenophobia and racism, of course, didn't take long to appear in mass media. So he really wanted to return their faces into the neighborhood. But then he decided after the riots to bring those faces to the rest of Paris. So they were, I mean, as you can see in these pictures, their faces posted in different areas from Bastille to the Marais to the borders of the Seine. And then later, in 2013, he learned that the buildings that featured the original pasting of these posters were going to be demolished. So he revisited the project that he developed in 2006 and with a local artist from the neighborhood and decided to put these faces inside the apartment. So when the buildings were demolished, he created a sort of new dialogue between the recent history of Paris, its suburbs, and its inhabitants. And we will also visit the neighborhood, so including a building that is located very near the Clichy-Montfermeil train station, which is a new center conceived by a Belgian architectural firm. And this center has a very flexible plan that includes spaces for workshops, exhibitions, performances, artist rehearsals, and was designed to generate like new dynamics between artistic creation, research, and education in that very specific neighborhood. So from these two incursions in Arrondissement 13 and Clichy-sous-Bois, we will zoom out to understand the urban history of Paris, of the city of Paris, and its most contemporary interventions. And there is an institution that is perfect for that. So we will visit the Pavillon de l'Arsenal, where they have a permanent exhibition of the urban history of Paris. But then they also have some of the most extraordinary exhibitions that I have ever seen about these new developments in the city of Paris. An important case of study for talking about neoliberalism or the neoliberal city is this massive project by Herzog and de Meuron, which is called the Tour Triangle and is being designed to be in Port de Versailles, that is just at the border of the periphery. You can see here the periphery, which is this highway that circles Paris, which was conceived in 2008, before the financial crisis. It is a visual manifestation of laissez-faire, economics. So a visual manifestation of neoliberal architecture. So we will also, during that first week, we will devote some time to visit the architectures of the Fifth Revolution. And we will start, of course, with the extraordinary mega projects developed by Charles de Gaulle and Paul Delouvrier, that, as Gordon said, was his chief representative for the Paris region and who was in charge of the master plan of the 1960s. So we will focus on 3 different banlieues of Paris, from the development of Cergy-Pontoise, which is the satellite city in the north part of the city of Paris, and to the futurist apartment blocks in Créteil in the south. So here you see the circular plans and organic architecture features of this satellite town. We will follow with the architectures that were developed as part of the main airport, the Charles de Gaulle Airport. And here we see the very first terminal designed by Paul Andrew, which is this massive, brutalist example of architecture. So we will continue with Georges Pompidou and the projects that were part of meaningful displacements of functions from the center of Paris to the periphery and the transformation of those original sites. So we will begin in the center of Paris, very close from the Rise Paris Center, with the Pompidou Center and its neighboring music institution, the IRCAM. The transformation of the area of Les Halles, where the food market used to be in Paris, with those incredible, beautiful iron warehouses by Victor Ballard from the 19th century that were transferred to La Villette, and then the construction of this horrible complex that was called the Forum Les Halles in the 1970s. And then the multiple attempts to reverse that incredible bad decision in the Paris with a competition, and we will talk a little bit about the projects developed by some of the most important architects, from Reine Koolhaas to Jean Nouvel. And we will end it with this that has been the last construction in that area, which is Le Canopé from 2022 by Patrick Berger and his architectural team. We will also look at some of these residential complexes that were developed in the banlieue, from the Aïl Jaoud towers and the Cité Spinoza. So one in the north and the other one in the south. And of course, we cannot miss, sorry, I'm missing this. This is a gymnasium that is at the border of the 19th arrondissement, just next to the periphery, and that is inspired by the structures of an Asian community that is in the arrondissement number 20, that is just right there. And of course, we cannot miss the architectures of François Mitterrand, which includes, the pyramid of the Musée du Louvre, the completion of the business district of La Défense, the residential complexes by Ricardo Bofill with this absolutely monumental postmodern architecture, the Institute of the Arab World by Jean Nouvel, the Fondation Cartier, also by Jean Nouvel, with its extraordinary exhibitions of contemporary art. Here we see an image of the exhibition that is right now there of these incredible textiles by Colombian artist Olga Damaral. And on the upper part of the screen, you see an image of an exhibition by a fantastic Brazilian painter, Luis Cervini. And we will finish that week with the visit to some of the works developed by Jacques Chirac. One is the Musée de Quai Branly, which is this incredible museum, very polemic, and we will talk about that, that has these anthropological collections. And we will come back to the left bank of Paris, to that particular area in the 13th arrondissement. So here you see some images of that museum that is surrounded by one of the most beautiful gardens in Paris, and the area that we started the week with. So, I keep missing things. So I thought I forgot about this. This is a housing complex also by Herzog and de Meuron that was finished in 2000. And that is really a very interesting urban intervention. So this second week will be devoted to the 10 plans that Gordon mentioned. And we will start the week in the Cité de l'Architecture, which is the place where Sarkozy launched the Grand Paris master plan, right, for the new century. And we will follow some of the proposals we had followed those proposals to design some urban itineraries, and I'm going to mention only two. One that is going to happen along the Seine. So one of the proposals, the one by Antoine Grumbach, organized the city of Paris along the axis of the river, and stressing the need to go beyond the concentric model of urban space in order to improve both the economic performance and social organization of the metropolis. And it promised, growth and solidarity among urban, agricultural, industrial, and rural spaces, and between local and global economies, because the idea behind this is that Paris has to open to the sea. So we will be navigating from the center of Paris, the Seine, all the way to the north where Saint-Denis is located. So in the way, we have, incredible developments of the last years, like these two cultural centers, one by Shigeru Ban and the other one by the recent winners of the Pritzker Prize, that is like the Nobel Prize in Architecture, that are sharing this island in the center of the Seine. We will also go to these incredible works of arts, one by Jean Dubuffet in another island, in the island Saint-Germain, also there in that trajectory of the river. And the other one is one of these inhabited sculptures by André Bloch. And then we will end in Saint-Denis, where the Olympic Village was developed by Perrault, and we will take the metro back through one of the latest train stations, which is the Saint-Denis-Payelle metro station by Kengo Kuma. And the other itinerary is along a section of the Boulevard Périphérique. So we will start in La Villette. That was this incredible park developed by Bernard Schumi in the 80s. And we will also visit a masterpiece in terms of music, but not in terms of architecture, I will say. We will talk about that later, which is the Philharmonique by Jean Nouvel again. We will go also to see Renzo Piano's incredible, beautiful, low-cost residential housing complex that is just in that neighborhood, and the Communist Party building by Brazilian architects, Oscar Niemeyer. And then we will cross the periphery to the other side in order to go to Pantin. And we will visit some of the architectural studios. There are also fashion workshops, culinary gardens, agricultural schools, dance institutions, and more. So it's a very vibrant community where there is also this, one of the best art galleries in Paris, that here you see, how this industrial building was rehabilitated as a gallery that is almost a museum in itself. So then the last week, we will focus on the principles of these 10 projects, right? But we will also be talking Paris in conversation with London, with Sao Paulo, and with Beijing. So we will have the opportunity to visit some of these cultural and communal centers that were developed in the banlieue. So we will go from the Museum of Contemporary Art that has been there for over 10 years now, to this Center for Research and Experimentation that is called Le Laboratoire, and that is just to the north part of, located in the north part of Paris. And then we will also look at the way that the periphery has been coming also into the city with different community spaces, from urban gardens to urban forests to edible gardens, school streets, and refugee shelters. So that's more or less just in a kind of big picture what we have designed for you guys, and I think that we will have a lot of fun. Irene?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Fabiola. And then I'll just quickly just talk about the program. I put on the chat the link to the course webpage, which you can also see with this QR code. It'll take you there. Just really quickly, this is Rice Credit. This is not like student abroad with the student, or study abroad with the study abroad office. This is, you can register like a regular summer course. Classes are in English, taught by Rice professors. This is a 6 credit hour course. There is financial aid available if you're an eligible student for financial aid. But on top of that, Rice Global, our office, does provide both tuition and travel awards. You just need to apply for that in the course application directly. And the session is July 21st through August 8th. Classes take place at the Rice Global Paris Center, but also classes like you all saw today are using Paris as the classroom. But the center itself is located in the Marais, which is a really great side of town. This is open to any Rice undergraduate, and it's an interdisciplinary course. And you can read more about that in the course webpage. And also, I'm sure you learned a lot about what it is in today's presentation. Tuition cost is $1,800 per credit hour. This is a 6 credit hour course. That covers housing for all 3 weeks, a Metro card for your time there, course set, excursions and tickets, and 3 group meals, and travel insurance. We're also working to see if we can add some other things to this program, so stay tuned. Financial aid, again, if you already receive financial aid, you're eligible to receive aid up to 9 credit hours a summer for 2 summers at 50% the tuition rate. I work with the financial aid office directly, and they let me know how much aid you have, and I will include that in your award letter once you're accepted. In addition, again, if you apply for those Rice Global Additional Assistance Awards, I will let you know how much you've been awarded for that. You just need to ask. There's no requirements for that. It's just ask for it and we will try our best to help you get to Paris. So just make sure you indicate that in the application. And we really do want to work with you to get you to Paris. Lastly, the application deadline is January 31st of next year. If you do have questions about anything prior to that, feel free to shoot me an email at pariscenter@rice.edu. And just really quickly, I want to show you guys the course webpage that QR took you to. This has our email, like you can it'll open up to the email right here. I'll post this recording right here, and then this will link you directly to the application. And a lot of the stuff that we talked about is listed here. In addition, there is a draft syllabus that you can take a look at on the web page. And you can also take a look at our student program page, which has all the different courses that we're doing for the program, any FAQs that you may have for pre-departure and while you're there. This travel guide will be provided to you if you're accepted to the program, and it's a comprehensive guide about living in Paris, safety, and all that good stuff. And lastly, you can take a look at our Student Life in Paris page, which shows you kind of where you're going to live and you're going to learn. This video itself will show you what the residences look like. We do have these residences in Paris, like Gordon and Fabiola said, in the 13th arrondissement. And you have an RA that's there to help you. And on top of that, you don't have to share a room. So you each get your own apartment in these residences, which has their own bathroom and small kitchen area. So take a look at this video to learn more. And then we do have some additional information about Paris and etiquette and some other useful French phrases. So that's it for me. Again, if you guys have questions, please email us at pariscenter@rice.edu. I don't know if Lynette, you do have any questions. Maybe we can quickly answer something, but we are kind of past time.
And I'll also say I'm more than happy to answer any questions if anybody wants to email me directly.
Yes, and Fabiola and Gordon's emails are listed in that draft syllabus. So take a look at that and feel free to email as needed. And thank you guys for listening today. Oh, thank you, Lynette. Perfect.
Excellent.
All right.
Okay,
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Au revoir.